Today our conversation will be on the intangible cultural element of storytelling. We have with us today Dr. Jane Small, retired French teacher, actress, toastmaster, and storyteller. Okay, good morning again, Dr. Small. Thanks for being with us at ACIJ.
Thanks for asking me. Yes.
Okay, so today we're having a conversation with you about storytelling. Many persons know that you are a French teacher by profession, and they know you also as a luminary in theater arts.
Well,
But many persons don't know you as a storyteller. So tell us, when did you get involved in storytelling?
well, let me go back a little bit. A long, long time ago, like 1946, maybe you weren't even born yet, a little girl went to high school. And in her country where she was at school, the country was still a British colony. And that meant that England sent out teachers to teach the children to become civilized, as they say. Yeah, we had to learn to speak English, learn English songs, learn British history, learn nothing about themselves or about their country or their own language. That little girl, after high school, came to Jamaica to go to university.
From where?
From Guyana.
From Guyana. Okay.
So it's part of the Caribbean.
Right.
Come to university, and she met Professor Maureen Warner Lewis and Professor Rupert Lewis, and for the first time she was hearing about Africa. Never heard about African life or anything about the culture. And so after she finished university, she decided she wanted to go to Africa to learn some more. That little girl was me.
Right.
And I went to Africa. And at that time, I was about 25 years old, very stush, dress up, nice clothes, makeup, and I got into this village where I was to teach in Nigeria. And when I walked down the street in this village, the people would clap and say, "Oibo, oibo, oibo, oibo." And I wanted to know, what is the meaning of oibo? They say, you know, be African woman, dressed like that, you be European woman.
Oh.
So I am black like them,
Right.
but they are seeing something European,
Right.
which I got from all of that education. I just want to point out that is what colonization did to us. It deprived us of our own history and our own language. And I became a little bit of both, black, but I am looking European. But when I was there in Nigeria for 2 years, I saw a lot of cultural activities. I saw an old woman telling story in Nigeria. I went to cultural activities in the village where I was. So after that time, when I returned to Jamaica, walking around, I could hear sounds, and I said, but when I was in Nigeria, I heard those sounds. Then is when, for the first time, I understood the meaning of this word intangible culture. I realized that a lot of what our ancestors brought to the Caribbean as slaves, because they brought their culture in, and they passed on and they practiced their culture, that a lot of it still remain here, and we don't even realize that we have it here. I became very interested in looking at African retentions in many forms, and one was storytelling. So when I heard Miss Lou telling stories, I said, but I heard that in Africa. When I heard her say, Chichi Bado, and people read, some of them are, I said, but that is call and response, which I heard in Africa. So the retention of that way of speaking and telling story, I heard in Africa, and I realized that it is very much here. And so I got very interested myself in the whole form of telling stories.
Okay.
That's how it started for me.
Right. All right. So, following up on what you just said, storytelling has been regarded as a source of preserving and also disseminating ancestral knowledge. What are your views on this assessment in terms of using stories to pass on ancestral knowledge? You just
It's
touched
not
on
my
it.
view. Historically, our ancestors came from an oral culture. They couldn't read and they couldn't write, and so they had to pass on information orally. So we have gained that. And to use your voice to pass on information to another generation means you have to be very dramatic, and you have to have a good voice, you have to have a emotion, you have to understand emotion and so on. So that's where we are coming from.
Right.
We are an oral people. So this is not my opinion. Historically, it is known.
Okay.
And so much so that the Western world, Europeans say we don't have any culture, we don't have any literature, we don't have any philosophy because it's not written.
Right.
The Western world has literature, and they're saying that we had none of that. It was Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a novelist from Kenya, who created the word orature. She says we have it, but it's orally, so it's not literature, it's not written, but it's spoken, so it's orature.
Right.
So that's where it's all, it's in our genes to be able to express ourselves orally.
Okay. So do you view storytelling as more than an art form? Do you view it as a teaching device as well?
Oh, very definitely, definitely. I think that it's a very important and useful tool because our children love telling stories. The world loves storytelling, adults and children. And they remember. They remember what they learn in a story, and I wish teachers would use that more than they do. I think mathematics, science could be explained easily if it's put into a story form.
Okay.
And I wish that teachers can find a way to do that. I used it myself in teaching French, grammatically, to show why a subject and verb have to agree. I tell them about husband and wife and marriage, and I make, and tell a story, and they understand right away, And I will tell you that at one time I used to go up in the hills to tell stories every summer to children. And every year I have to think of stories to tell them. And one year I didn't really prepare new stories. And there was a child there who had attended that storytelling session the year before, and she said, "Tell us the story about the alligator." So I did not prepare it for that day, and I started to tell them the story. And she said, "You left out the part." 1 year later,
Yes.
she had remembered the details of that
Right,
story.
right.
I tell you that to tell you that it's a very good way of remembering. You have to have, so that's why I say it's a very good tool for teaching, I asked one school, if you had to teach Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, how would you start to introduce? And nobody could tell me that we have that problem right here in Jamaica with border issues between two borders.
Right.
A boy comes from one border, a girl from another, and they fall in love and causes problems. And they only need to start with that story, and the children will understand immediately the basic issue in Romeo and Juliet. So there are many, many ways in which storytelling can be used in teaching to make a point clear, to a message, because the storytelling has three important aims. One is the connection with the audience. The other is to retention of how do you get them to remember the points, and of course the other is the message. Every story has a message, a moral. You're teaching something
Okay.
through a story.
So these make for good storytelling.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Those are very, very important aspects of storytelling.
Okay. Touching on that, do you think a person's imagination, like encouraging it, can lead to character development, and how do you think that in itself can impact on a wider societal development, just fostering your imagination through storytelling?
Well, I think that today we have to learn to live with creativity, and that is imagination and creativity, or else we won't be able to survive.
Right.
I mean, even if you think now of the pandemic situation we are in, you have to find ways.
Right.
You have to use your imagination, you have to use your creativity to find ways of coping with particular situations. And we are very good at that as a people coming from the past.
Right.
Our ancestors did that. We have it in our genes. So I do believe that learning to tell stories, using storytelling, does develop this imagination. It encourages the development of imagination.
Okay. Do you think storytelling is a dying art form?
Storytelling as we know it from culturally, coming from our ancestors, we are trying very hard to make it survive. But technology has, of course, well, first of all, the imposition of European culture through colonization. It's a written language, you know.
Right.
I went to school, I was very, very Europeanized. When I went to Africa, I had difficulty fitting in with the African culture, and where I was in a village working, because I was so Europeanized that that's why they looked at me and said, "Where you go?" They saw me as a white woman. So I had lost that. And we have lost that way of speaking and telling stories, although it exists as an intangible activity. And for example, my son said to me, for a long time I lived in Portmore, and we used to see the boys at the street corner stand up talking, and my son used to walk over there and join them. Storytelling going on, you know. They're sharing ideas and talking, oral transfer.
Right.
And he said to me the other day, that is why it came to me, he said, you know, I think I should write a book about all those things that I learned from the street corner,
Right.
from those boys. So storytelling is going on in an informal way.
Right.
At the street corner, and mainly boys, because not many girls are not usually in the street corner thing. They're boys, but you have storytelling in the bar. Those men who like to go to the bar on Friday night
Yes.
and talk about their conquests and how many women they have and what and what
Indeed.
is another form of
Right.
storytelling.
Right.
They say in the salon, women sitting down in the salon chatting
Yes.
is another form of storytelling. But also, when you go home when a husband goes home at night, he tells his wife what he did during the day, what happened. I live with my son now, and every night he tells me all that transpired during the whole day.
Yes.
Very often I don't have much to tell him because I am there during this confinement that we're in during the I'm not doing a lot now, going out to work, but that's another form of storytelling, a lot of sharing information and friends getting together and talking. Storytelling is going on an informal way.
Right.
I am not talking about storytelling on the stage. That's formal. And that is being challenged now with technology. As you know now, it's Zoom.
Right.
We are communicating by Zoom, by telephone, by television,
Right.
and it's very challenging for the storyteller. So the storyteller has to, we're trying to revive it, as you know, at the current moment. In 2014, I think it was, in Jamaica, we established a National Storytelling Day in November. And so we are working hard at reviving storytelling, sharing information like that, one-to-one. So developing the voice and transmitting information in that way.
Do you think that recognition has been impactful so far? Having the National Storytelling Day?
I am not sure that it's reaching everybody.
Okay.
I don't know how many people know. I have told people about November the 20th as National Storytelling Day, and they never heard about it. They didn't know. So I am not sure that it's getting out there. I know they tell schools to go into libraries and so on. I went to a library as a storyteller, and there was nobody there. So I don't know how far the outreach is. But I think it's a very good effort to bring back storytelling. If we're going to teach about life through the storytelling, because that's one of the important things. That's what our ancestors did. They were passing on the mores of society onto the younger generation so that they understand the culture in which they're living and the culture in which they had to contribute. I don't know that we are doing that. Unfortunately, we look at storytelling as an activity to amuse, to sit down and laugh. And I have a problem with that. Especially when we think of a Nancy as a crook, a trickster, a lazy man, somebody looking for a way to get by. I think it is a negative image of Anansi. Anansi is us, because our stories come from West Africa, from the forest, and all the animals in the forest. And when you look at, and every animal has a personality, is a type of person that we have in our society. Anansi is the smallest animal, smallest and black. Look at it. Lion came and took over from tiger. Tiger was the king of the forest. And tiger was a good king. Look at lion with his mane, his blonde mane. He represents the colonizer. Powerful. Take over the forest. And poor little Nancy, look at all of the other animals, and every other animal has something, and he wants something for himself too. Each person wants to fulfill his potential. That's the story. As Nancy represents us. We are in this situation, political situation over the years, and we have to find a way to develop our potential within the context of this forest, with the king, with the king lion that take over. So it's a very important story for us, and sometimes we have to find ways and means of being able to survive in that society, and that's not a negative thing. That's a very strong and powerful activity of the underdog, you know, which is what we are.
Okay, so does storytelling involve a particular structure?
Yes, that I have seen. I've studied, I've attended workshops on storytelling in Martinique. Actually, I was in the French Islands, and I attended a course on how to tell a story. And generally speaking, there is something that is lacking. The main character wants something. Let us say, for example, the king wants a wife. He's very unhappy. He wants a wife. And he puts out an edict. He says, anyone who can find a wife for me, I will pay $1 million. And Nancy here $1 million. And Nancy won the $1 million. And Nancy goes and says, he offered to go and find this wife. And Nancy sets out to search. And he goes along. And as he goes along, he meets up problems. He gets an obstacle in his way. He got to cross a stream.
Right.
He meets up a dragon, and he got to fight a dragon. And he has to overcome these obstacles on the way to getting to where he knows there is a woman locked up in a tower, in a building, in a palace somewhere. He's going to get her.
Right.
But he has these obstacles that he has to overcome. But on the way, he will meet some old man who will say, where are you going? And he said, I'm going over to the palace over there. And the old man said, okay, if you have any problem on the way, just say this word, abracadabra, and you will overcome the obstacle. Or it might be, take this ring and rub it, sir, when you see it, and you will get through.
Right.
There is something that is given to you to help you along the way. And he goes and he does that. And usually in stories, it's 3 or 7 times. Those are the magical numbers. Obstacles that he gets to the tower, and he gets the woman. And he's coming back, he meets obstacles again, and he got to overcome these obstacles again. And he has his magic wand or his magic word, and he has to overcome those obstacles to get back to the king, to take the girl, to get the $1 million or whatever the reward is. So we're talking about going through a number of difficulties, backward both ways, to get success, to reach success, to get a reward. And the whole point of this story structure is life. It is saying that this is what life is all about. You have struggles, you have problems. It is a given that life has obstacles that you have to overcome and challenges. So that's the story. Right. Now, many people don't tell that is what a story is about. They just tell you about the fighting with the dragon and the this and the crossing the river and so on and so on. And people laugh and so on. But they're not understanding the basic message of the story. And most stories have that kind of structure. So the storyteller, in order to be able to tell that story very well, must be an actor. Must have a good voice. He must be an impersonator. He has to pretend he's a monkey. He has to pretend he's a frog. He has to take on the personality of whatever animal, if it's an animal, or whatever character. So he has to be an impersonator. He has to have a good voice. He has to understand emotion, because he has to go through all these different emotions to convey that to the audience, because he has to get the audience to be part of the story and to experience all of that. So he has to be very, very clever in being able to do that. But he also has to have a pleasant voice while he's telling the story. Right? So the storyteller has to have those particular attributes. To be a impersonator, to be an actor, to use a voice in many different ways. He has to use pauses when he's telling the story, because pauses are very effective. You have to give the audience time to absorb the points that you make. So he's very clever at using pauses as well in telling a story. So those are some of the main attributes of the storyteller. But the point is that it's a journey through life. The story is a journey through life. And as I said, stories have the magical numbers of 3 and 7. It's 3 obstacles or 7 obstacles. You go 3 and you have to go and come back to get the reward. Right?
Is that an African trope, having 3 and 7 being magical or mystical numbers, or is it?
I don't know where it came from, but I read everywhere that, especially number 3, because I do public speaking, and again I found that number 3 is a magical number.
Yes.
The way a story is structured, you have beginning, you have middle, and end.
Right.
3, and they said in the middle of your speech, in public speaking, you have 3 main points in the middle part. So I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
But I have seen that 3 is a magical number in in communicating. Yes.
Yes, okay. What's the difference between a storyteller and a griot?
Oh, griot. Well, griot is a French word from French West Africa.
Okay.
And the griot is a person who has the history, the knowledge of the history of a clan. The clan. And a griot is born into a griot clan. It's not any and everybody is a griot. He's born into a griot clan, into that family.
Right.
And so he is born into the art. Right. And the griot is very close to the king or the oga, the person. And so he has the responsibility of passing on the history so the clan will know where they come from, so they know where they're going. Like Marcus Garvey said, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. And that is his responsibility, to tell the history of the clan. The storyteller, on the other hand, tells stories. And he's entertaining. But also, the storyteller comes into a community. He's just an ordinary person who tells and deals with probably a problem within a community, and he comes to sit and talk with the community, and he tells it in an amusing way. But the thing about that storyteller is that he has the skill of using a participatory method of telling a story. That is to say, the community is going to take part in the storytelling and the understanding of understanding the message of the story is very important. And so they are allowed to take part. They're sitting on the ground, flat on the ground, in a circle, so that they can get up and walk into the circle and participate at any time. They're allowed to do that. It's called participatory theater. And we have lost that in a way, because we have the European stage, that, you know, like at the War Theater, like at the Philip Sherlock Center, you have a stage with the audience, the actors on a stage and the audience down at the bottom looking at. That's not African. African is everybody is on the same level and can participate. Have you ever been to the cinema and you hear people in the audience talking to the actors on the screen? Because we want to do that. That's where we come from. We've come from participatory theater. And I notice that very, very often they need to be able to participate and solve the problem. They tell the actors, don't do that, go so, do that. They're telling the actors what to do, you know, because that's what we would have done in olden days. So that's very important. And unfortunately, I don't see very much of that as we do theater today. Philip Sherlock Center has 2 stages. It has a proscenium arch at the front, which is a European stage, where you're on the stage and the audience is down, but behind that is a circle, the round, where people can sit around, and I have acted in that. I love it. I love acting in the round, where you are in the center and the audience is around you. You have to know how to talk to everybody in every direction at the same time. So they have both cultures in one space, because that's what we are. That's what I am.
That was a
deliberate
design? Was that a deliberate design to have the both cultures reflected?
Yes. Actually, it wasn't really for theater. It was for putting an artist to sit in the round, like a painter or a sculptor, and whilst he is there performing, in the process of performing, people can see and talk to him and see what he is doing. That was the original reason for that round, but it's also used for theater, and I love it. I have acted in there a few times, and I love it. I love acting in the round.
Going back to storytelling and making it participatory, how useful a tool is a prop device. Do storytellers rely on props?
No, and that's one of the techniques. They have different techniques of telling a story. First of all, you can be a storyteller, just you on stage like a monologue. You're just telling the story. I saw a man in England. I was passing through and I heard of a storytelling session and I went. And there was this white man who sat down and he told an African story just sitting. He did not move. And I have never forgotten that story.
Okay.
But when I tell that story, I have to act it.
Okay.
I get up and I act it. So that comes out of where I'm coming from.
Right.
We have to move.
Right.
And I have to gesture. As Paul Kings Douglas said, we come out from Africa where we used to throw spear and think we lost this use of our limbs and action, and we use it now in storytelling. The gestures, very important.
Okay.
But this man told that story sitting down, a very powerful story which I have never forgotten. And I tell, and that's one technique. You can just be the storyteller. The other technique is you're the storyteller, but you become actors in the story. So it's an in and out, and that's very African. You're in and out. You start by being the narrator.
Right.
And that story that Englishman told, I tell in that way. You start by saying, long, long ago in Africa, there was a farmer who was not very rich and he was not very poor, but he had several fat black and white cows. Every morning he would go into the cow shed and I would walk and sit on a stool, an imaginary stool. There's no stool,
right.
Imaginary stool, and I milk my cows, and there's no cows, and I milk them. And then I take my buckets of milk into the house, and I move. So I'm using a space.
Right.
And all the props are imaginary. There's no milk, there's no cows, there's no house, there's no table. And I'm standing I'm looking and I see a woman drop from the sky. And another woman, beautiful African woman, and I go out and I grab her and there's no woman. But I'm miming all of this.
Right.
I have to create the scene in such a way that is very clear to my audience, where everything is without anything being on the stage.
Right.
So that's another technique.
Okay.
So you're in and out. You're outside, you're the narrator, and then you go into the story and you become a character in your story.
Okay. So what about puppeteering? Because you are a puppeteer.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get involved in that? And seen as though, as a storyteller, you have come to rely on the act of miming then.
Yes.
What prompted the need to transition into being a puppeteer? Which is like a prop.
Well, that started when my son's first birthday party, and I didn't know how to entertain all these flipping children that came to the party, and I took materials that I found. Because as a trained teacher,
Right.
I was taught about using puppeteering in teaching, but I had never used it.
Right.
So I knew about puppeteering.
Right.
I knew the value of using puppets,
Right.
but I had never, and that was the first time I made some puppets.
Oh, okay.
And I was not amazed at children. My husband actually filmed them, and we had the same, these children, they were totally, and I saw the puppets working. And then later on in teaching, I remember I had a grade 8 class that just would not try to speak in French. And I was so frustrated, I didn't know what to do. And I said, remember I had these puppets at home, and I brought the puppets and I gave them. And miraculously, when they put the puppets in their hand, they made the puppets speak without realizing that they were speaking.
Right.
So the fear that they had of trying and of making grammatical mistakes in French, they overcame that because they were hiding behind the puppet. So the puppet became a mask behind which they became freed to express themselves, and I love that. And so I went on after that doing puppets and teaching, and I employ the values that were being promoted by the government with children, And I did many shows right here at the Institute of Jamaica in Children.
Okay. What is the role of storytelling in West African culture?
It's our art form. As Black people, it's our art form. Communicating, using gestures. We have call and response in storytelling. You say crick and the audience say crack.
Okay.
You say Nancy, you say Tori. In Trinidad, they say Tim Tim, they say Boise. In Guadeloupe and Martinique, they say Est-ce que la cour d'or? No, la cour ne dort pas. So we have this call and response. And it's not only oral, but in music, the Griot uses his kora. He has a musical instrument, so he's talking and singing and telling story, and the music answers to the voice in speaking. So that call and response is very African, and we have got it. We got it in the church, where the priest say one line and the congregation sing. Call and responses. We get that from Africa. So it's a lot that we have here, intangible culture that exists here.
Can you think of a story that resonated with you?
The story about the eagle is a very important story for me because it really speaks to us people in the Caribbean and people who have gone through colonization and who don't know themselves. And it's a story about a farmer who wanted to make some money, and he decided to have a chicken farm. And he got all white chickens for this farm. But he didn't make any money. And a friend came and said, "Man, don't worry, I know how you can make some money. I was in the hills and I saw an eagle's nest. If you can bring down the eagle, put the eagle in a cage, people will come to see an eagle and you will make some money." And so he did just that. He went up the hills, he climbed, and he managed to trap the eagle, bring the eagle down, build a cage, and put the cage for people to come and to look at the eagle. He still wasn't making money. And then the man said to him, "And there must be some eggs, eagle eggs up in the nest. If you get the eagle eggs, you can bring them down, put them under one of your laying hens, and you'll have your own eagle. And then you can make your money." So he went up and he got some eagle eggs. And he put the eggs under his laying hen. And one day, ploops, out comes a little eagle who doesn't know he's an eagle. He thinks he's a chicken. And he was very happy. This little eagle went running around the farm. Farmer tried to hold him and he couldn't catch him because he so liked being with the white chickens. Gone running around. Lost him. A few days after the other egg hatched, out comes a little eagle. He doesn't know he's an eagle. He thinks he's a chicken. But this little one kept looking up at the sky the whole day. Hours. Don't know why. It's just something about the sky that attracted him. And one day he looked up at the sky, he saw a big black spot in the sky. It was an eagle. And the eagle looked down and saw this little eagle on a chicken farm, and he flew right down and perched on a branch. He said, "What are you doing down there on a chicken farm?" He said, "Because I'm a chicken." He said, "You're not a chicken." He said, "If I'm not a chicken, what am I?" "You're an eagle." Eagle? What's an eagle? He said, "You come up here and I'll tell you your history." He said, "Chickens can't fly." The eagle said, "Flap your wings." I said, "Flap your wings." And he flapped until he could fly. And he flew right up and sat on the branch next to the eagle. Eagle said, "Okay, now let me tell you your history. Your father was the king of the skies. And your mother flew alongside your father in the skies. That's what you are. You are the son of a king." And it went on. And he told him his whole history. The point of that is we don't know who we are. If you don't know, you must know your history. Some of us think we are chickens when we are in fact eagles. And some of us don't know we can fly, but with a struggle, we can fly up and, you know, reach the heights. So that's one story that I like very much to tell teenagers.
Right.
The other story is about a long, long time ago, in the good old days it's called, in this village, long ago. And people just love to have feasts. They have a feast for anything. When they finish farming and they bring in the harvest,
Yeah.
they have a feast.
Right.
If the moon come out, they have a feast. If once somebody have a baby, they have a feast. If they pass and nothing happens, they decide to have a feast. So one day they're having a feast like this, sitting on the ground with leaves. The men will kill the goats and the chicken, and they have the food there, and they sit down. They eat it with their hands. The food is on the leaves, and they sit down eating. And a stranger came in. But he wasn't only a stranger, he was a strange-looking man. He had skin that had no color, and his hair looked like yellow of ripened corn, and his eyes looked like it caught the blue from the sky, glassy eyes. And he looked at them and he said, "You are so primitive, sitting on the ground and eating out of leaves with your hands. You need to have a table." He said, "Table? Table? What's a table?" And he took a stick and he drew on the ground what the table looked like with a flat top and 4 legs. He said, "Yeah." They said, "Yeah, we would like to have a table." He said, "Give me 4 men and I will go and they will bring back a table." And he took 4 men, and after some time they came back with a big table. So the next time they were having a feast, everybody is going to put the food on the table. And they couldn't all fit around the table. Problem, they start to quarrel about who should fit at the table.
Right.
Some said women should, some said no, women, no. Then some said the children, no. The young men said, "No, it's young men time now, the young men." So the elders had to sit down and discuss about this problem that had come into their community. And whilst they're discussing, somebody cut one of the legs of the table. And so when they came back and about to start the feast, the table just toppled over. So, and the elder said, "Who did this?" And nobody would own up. Elder said, "What? You are being dishonest? This is the first time that this is happening in our community. We have always shared everything." He said, "It is this table that caused the trouble. We must get rid of the table." And he told them, and they all brought sticks and things, and they beat until they broke up the table. So they had no more table. So the next time I had the feast, they're sitting on the ground. But the young men liked the idea of a table. And they went out. Look for the man, the white man, the man with the skin with no color. And he said, "You can make your own little table. You can take some wood cut down from the tree." And they did. And so they came back to the feast with little tables, each one sitting at their own table. And that is how it happened. Some had, and some didn't have. And you may think that it was Edward Siaga who created the expression of the have and have nots, but that happened a long, long time ago in Africa, in a village, where some people had and some people didn't have. And since that time, we are working hard at becoming a harmonious community and share and have equality where everybody can have the same thing. And I like that story because it's all about equality.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Small, for sitting with us and sharing with us your insights into storytelling, and for pretty much just opening our eyes to see how powerful storytelling is and how impactful it can be on an individual's life and the society overall. Yes. So thank you a lot for sitting with us, and we appreciate it.
I must thank you for involving me in your program.
Okay.
I enjoy storytelling, so it was not a problem for me. I really enjoyed sharing with you what I have learned from my experience.
Right. All right. Thank you. Okay.